a century ago this year, to discover if China has finally recovered from what was a massive rupture in the link with its ancient past. Isabel Hilton reports in The Shadow of the Emperor, our Sunday feature tonight at 9:30. This week in the essay on Radio 3, we've been highlighting the work of one of the most original thinkers of the French Renaissance, a man who was to influence the writings of, amongst others, Shakespeare and Laurence Sterne. Michel de Montaigne was born in 1533, and he was a nobleman, a public official, and a wine grower. But it was his essays, free-roaming explorations of his thought and experience, that were to make him famous. What's less well known, though, is the fact that in the late 1580s he was called upon by the Queen Mother, Catherine de' Medici, to use his powers of diplomacy to try and settle an issue concerning the succession of the French crown. And this evening's drama on 3 tells that story. With Roger Allam as Michel de Montaigne, we present Living with Princes by Stephen Wakelam.
If others examine themselves as I do, they might find themselves as full of inanity as I do. Vanity, licentiousness, inconstancy. Well, get rid of these attributes. I cannot. I aim here only at revealing myself, which will perhaps be different tomorrow. I do not portray being or absolute truth. I portray passing of thoughts that are unsettled and at times contradictory. Should my mind find a firm footing, I would not be writing these essays or attempts at understanding.
These were not ordinary times of tranquility. What you have to remember was that our country, riven by civil war, through long habit, was in ruins, hungry, exhausted.
My most fervent wish at that time, so I thought, was to be wholly self-reliant and self-contained, not to be interested in the affairs of state, and to be free of the responsibility for them.
He was writing his book, a new edition of his essays. It was a volume that was to play its part in what happened next.
A summons from the Queen Mother, who wrote to me very courteously.
Monsieur de Montaigne, because I hold in great esteem your fidelity and zealous devotion to my service, it is a pleasure to me to order and enjoin you very expressly that without delay or excuse we very humbly entreat you to come here just as soon as your affairs may permit. It is an important and delicate matter to look into the said means of a good peace and general repose of this kingdom.
She had been staying at the Chateau of Saint-Brice, near Cognac, since November the 16th, and spent the second half of the month there, holding her court, giving receptions. There are rooms at the castle waiting for you. We're expected there. There are clothes provided.
Clothes?
Whatever you might need or want to wear. And for your wife. They thought she might be accompanying you.
Oh, that means banquets and all the rest of it.
I think we're in for something of a wait. The Queen Mother is indisposed, confined to bed.
Oh, for how long?
Well, not for me to ask. At that time, the most urgent political question was who would succeed to the French throne after Henri III, then rumoured to be sick. The King of Navarre was first in the royal line, but who many thought should be disqualified because of his Protestant religion. It was the 2nd day of December, 1587. The castle newly built with fine views.
I've no wish to be here at all.
Will you say that to her?
I'd rather be anywhere than here. When I was young and haunted the court of Paris, I longed for influence, for glory. No more, the deadliest of sins.
The desire for glory?
Yes. Then I became a lover of letters, of learning. So...
Well, you're here. It's a pleasant enough view, and you might get costive otherwise.
Let's go down.
You're always warning about the dangers of complacency.
I'm twice, near 3 times your age. I've been over these fences before. She wants me to talk to Navarre, who refuses to see her, or is making difficulties. She wants him to renounce his religion, become a Catholic, and he will refuse. She thinks I have influence over him.
What you do?
What I want is pen and books to see out my retirement. I'm indolent and sluggish, lax and drowsy. My greatest desire is to be slothful.
Well, that's a different matter. And probably untrue. We best get down.
My current secretary, Pellier, the one who unscrambles my scrawl. Temperate, moderate, reasonable, admirable, which is why I exaggerate my inclinations lest we drown in equability. I generally blurt out whatever is on my mind at any moment without pausing to set it into neat array. Sometimes, the keen servant, he writes these thoughts down.
The room in which he was to sleep during his stay was elaborately decorated. A richly covered bed. Books thought appropriate for a lover of letters had been placed here and there.
Ambrose, Augustine, Jerome and Gregory. They're more your style, faith and doctrine.
Oh, there's Sallust here, put out for you. Signed by her.
Enough for a stay of months. Where have they put you?
At least it's warm. I'm next to a chimney quite close by.
Well, take a book. And candle, though perhaps not the Sallust. Do you have any vices or excesses?
Yes.
Do you care to specify them?
Well, I think they are fairly common.
Genital?
Sometimes.
When I was your age, there were days, weeks, when I thought of little else, till I sated myself. I allowed my desires, obsessions, free rein, particularly when away from home.
I think that is giving in to a tyranny.
You are too controlled.
It is a quality that in your essays you advocate.
Have you had any dealings with prostitutes?
No. You've asked me this before.
Because you're a puzzle to me.
I am not like you.
You're not very frank.
Perhaps I have nothing to be frank about.
Well, there are serving women, of course. No charge. All in all, as I look back, I recommend sexual involvement to anyone who can use it in moderation. It's a vain occupation, it's true, unbecoming, shameful, but healthy, enlivening.
You are presently writing about these matters with a disregard for convention.
You think I ought not?
About your experience with prostitutes.
3, if memory serves, limited.
Is your wife aware of these details?
She will be when the essay is published, if she reads it.
Your daughter will read it.
Do you disapprove?
It may come as a surprise to her.
Well, I'm not going to censor myself at my age. It's not what people want from my writings. I was licentious. It's part of being human. That's my subject. What rules us, what we do about it. Oh, and one of the prostitutes robbed me. During proceedings, I barely got going. I may add this to the account. Humiliating.
At that time, when I worked with him, he was exploring in his writings all the depths and contradictions of experience. Often espoused a point of view not his own, just for amusement and practice in arguing. You were expected to respond. There was no reticence about him. Would talk in print of buttocks, cracks and tools. He was 58, all frankness and honesty. I was 22, conventional, well-mannered, unsure of myself, unused to princes and courts. What is she like?
Catherine? Wiser, but weaker than she once was.
Bodily?
She's stouter, slower, likes her food. No, I meant in terms of power. She calls herself Governess of France and wields some influence over her son, the King, but diminishing. He's 33, unwell.
Vice-ridden.
Some say so. The Prince of Sodom. fond of his favourites, and thereby asserts his independence of his mother. I think, without her, these past 30 years, all my adult life, the kingdom would have fallen to pieces and been lost, dismembered. Help me with this, will you? It has required willpower, something her son, the king, lacks. I think she has shown herself capable of doing whatever necessary to protect the throne.
Poisoning? Murder?
Lies, betrayal, whatever preserved the throne, with neither scruples nor remorse. What could the poor woman do, with 5 children in her arms after the death of her husband, and others attempting to encroach on the crown? Was she not forced to play strange parts? I wonder that she did not do worse. Now she has a passion for negotiations, patient, endless diplomacy. Even those who dislike or fear her in some wise now admire her.
Navarre?
She married him to her daughter, made him renounce his religion once, turned him into a Catholic overnight. It didn't take. There is distrust on his part. She dislikes him, but doesn't underestimate him. If her son dies, Navarre becomes king. She wants Navarre back as a Catholic again. But who will believe him, he says, when the pocket still retains the smell of the herring? He's a Protestant herring. Defies her.
Monsieur de Montaigne, the Queen is expecting you. This way. She has not been well.
No. How long should I...
Her Majesty will decide. As always.
I have long since learned that much of what passes for passionate conviction among our leaders is a showing off, made by men who involve themselves because they want to have an air of consequence or advance their private interests. Or, simply, perhaps, to keep busy so they don't have time to think about life. What we need in those who govern over us is foresight, wisdom, then decisiveness. Clever and bold kings or queens. They do not need to be good, just as a servant doesn't need to be chaste or a cook renounce profanity. A foreigner. I think she was born to tame and govern a people as unruly as the French.
I think my age is more suited to rest and to travel. Neither old age nor illness would stop me meeting you, Monsieur de Montaigne.
I trust your Majesty has recovered sufficiently.
I've found breathing difficult. Strange attack. It means I have to sleep sitting up. But sleep I do. How's your accommodation?
I'm grateful to your Majesty for the books and for the clothing provided.
Your wife has remained at Montaigne?
We've been absent from the estate because of the plague for many months. It was rife in Bordeaux, spread east and south. Of necessity, we had to move.
When did you return?
A little less than 2 weeks ago.
Then I understand. Your wife helps run the estate?
More capably than me.
Is it well defended?
Of itself, but no more than that. 2 towers and an entrance gate with a porter of ancient custom and ceremony who serves not so much to defend my door as to offer it with more decorum and grace. My feeling is that the thief is more likely to pass by that which is open. I have no wish to become my own jailer.
No.
We seem to have escaped lightly. The fields and vines have suffered. There have been some intrusions, the fringes of the estate, some pillaging of crops, some robberies of tenants.
Who by?
Mercenaries, freebooters.
Foreigners?
Frenchmen.
Protestants?
I wish I could say so. A rabble.
All France is famished for peace. This ceaseless warring with ourselves. The kingdom is vanishing away. I sometimes think that heaven and earth and the abyss are set against this poor realm. Unless a succession is secured while my son has no children, these conflicts will continue. You're a man foreign to factions. There are few like you. You know Navarre. You see him. You speak with him.
Yes.
He sometimes stays with you.
Your Majesty is well informed.
Is he determined on a war?
No.
Is he playing for time?
In order to do what, madam?
To mount an attack on the Catholic forces, the Leaguers.
I think his intentions are entirely defensive.
But he's seeking reinforcements in Germany and amongst the Swiss.
If he is, he would not tell me that.
Because you're a Catholic?
If he seeks foreign forces, as you say, it is only better to defend himself from the Catholic League, who themselves, madam, employ Spaniards, and, it's said, some Italians.
Well, Navarre has offended the king by taking up arms against him.
Not against your son, madam, but against the League and their leader, the Duke of Guise. These are old enmities. I bring to this meeting all the kind affection that I owe to you, and say this to you plainly, that if your son, having cast in his lot with the League, falls into their servitude, then there will be that war waged between the king and his legitimate heir, which you fear. As for the religion, whereof both sides make parade, it is a fine pretext for inducing their several parties to follow them.
I am a faithful daughter, I hope, in Christ Jesus, and preserver of the true faith.
And Navarre will not have the crown snatched from him, Protestant though he is determined to remain, by those, the Duke of Guise, whose defence of the Catholic religion is a pretence for taking over power.
I have no other desire but for the peace, tranquility, and unity of our kingdom. Do you think that I don't want to reduce the power of Guise? This sedition? The crown is weak. My son has no army of his own. He is unable to resist the demands of the Leaguers. I fear that he cannot deal with this as reason and duty command. I no longer know what remedy to apply to these present ills, nor the ills to come. I fear for my son and the power of the League. Unless Navarre becomes a Catholic, there is no means of ever seeing the salvation of our kingdom. I know that he does not trust me, any more than I trust him. Well, we'll let that rest. And I assure him that if he will now be the loyal servant of the crown, he will have my favour. Will you go to him? He refuses to see me. There's no time to be lost while these two armies gather. Tell Navarre he is our ally, our natural ally. I know that.
She sews silk. I became quite interested in the pattern, which seemed complex. She inquired about my health, my kidney stones. She recommended her doctor, gave me a remedy.
What's that?
Crushed tobacco powder. Smells like it.
What for?
It helps prevent the headaches. You chew it, apparently.
Are you sure that's wise?
I'm sure she wants me alive. As sure as I am that she would kill me or have me killed were it in her interest to do so. I think she needs me. Held my hand, fondly.
Throughout?
On leaving. The hand lingered. She likes me in the Florentine way, in order to make use of me. She prides herself of the fact that she never lets anyone leave her presence dissatisfied. She draws you in. I listen, moreover, without a frown to the blandishments that are offered to lure me into public life, and I protest so weakly that I appear quite willing to let myself be persuaded. And it will be fruitless.
You yourself know how to persuade.
I served once as mediator between the King of Navarre and the Duke of Guise when both were at the court. I was younger, committed, energetic, and unsuccessful. I will do now what I am asked to do, conscientiously, as my civic duty. I think the acrimony between Navarre and the Duke of Guise is the basis of the war now everywhere kindled. When Navarre was first married, 16 years ago, to Catherine's daughter, Margot, Guise had been her lover. It was the talk of Paris, and at that time Guise made all possible advances by services and small attentions to gain the friendship of the King of Navarre. But he was played with, and recognized that, and having found in him, after all his advances, only an implacable enemy, he now has recourse to war.
You think Navarre is to blame?
I think that Navarre is convinced that he will never make good his right to the succession of the crown during the lifetime of the Duke, that neither Guise nor those of his house will ever esteem themselves safe so long as the King of Navarre should live. I think that only the death of one or the other can put an end to it.
The France I knew at that time was a place so abandoned to chaos that one was led to expect a final ruin rather than a restoration of the state. Everything speeding to some indefinable end. Fields untilled, livestock destroyed. That winter, hard, closed down campaigning for the season. Navarre still held southern France, and the people were far hungrier and poorer and more desperate than they had been before the war started. We were on our way to his stronghold, Montauban, full of foreign soldiers. In all his proceedings, my master Montaigne had an open fashion, candid, blunt, even to his own cost. In addressing people of different parties, his habit was to say nothing to the one side that he could not repeat to the other. To change his tone, perhaps, though not his meaning.
I trust you will be agreeable, sir, to a discussion that takes us to the heart of the difficulty.
Have you ever seen Catherine angry?
No, sir.
She's been at combat all of my lifetime. An incompetent husband dies, leaves her with 5 children still in arms and the cares of the kingdom. No money, or never enough, and no army, but never angry. Not that anybody sees. Forgives wrongs done to her, dislikes me, though remains cordial. She's the most patient woman I know. It almost tries one's own patience. But who does she trust after all these years? Well, if she were tranquil, she wouldn't live so long.
Is that admiring, sir?
How's her health?
Not as vigorous as formerly.
It's allied with power. As it slips away, frail.
No sign of that.
How much real influence does she now exercise? How much does he?
The king?
Has her son sent her on this mission?
She fears the power of the League, of Guise's power over him. She knows the real enemy is Guise and not you.
And yet she's assisting assembling an army. Spanish troops and arms from the Low Countries.
She says the same of you, sir. Germans. I would have imagined today I was beyond the Rhine. Munich, perhaps, or Breslau. I'd rather be importunate and indiscreet than dissimulate, sir. And if the Queen were to die, whatever her relations with her son, the King, I think we would all have reason to fear the affairs of the realm would suffer greatly.
She treats me as a naughty child.
And you refuse to see her, insult her.
Has she offered me some theologian or learned cure to bring me back to the true faith?
No.
I think that the trouble I cause her at heart pleases her. If she were at rest, she wouldn't know how to live.
I think in all this she sees harm only for the king. She wishes him to govern in peace.
And amen to that. My supporters swear allegiance to the crown. Catholics undermine it.
She knows that. She fears for her son. He's not master of his own house. Guise rules.
The king has capitulated to him. They issue treaties and edicts against me. They make me an outlaw. I'm treated like a pig. They've surrounded me like a hunted pig and think to catch me in their net. But I shall pass through it, or over their dead bodies.
You are, nevertheless, subject to the king, sir. You wish to move against him directly?
They wish to bar me from inheriting the throne. I'm left to fight for my right to the succession. I have to resist this oppression. I have to destroy them. If I don't crush Guise and his ambitions, who will?
Then you must offer yourself as the king's protector. No one but you is able to stand up to Guise. What the Queen sees is the ruin of the crown, her son in the hands of those who wish to seize power from him. She feels defenceless, on tenterhooks. In this matter of religion, you are hemmed in by your followers. Protestant or Catholic matters little to you. I should say that many in this land care little for religion and use it for their own purposes.
Would you know?
If anyone picked out of either army, yours or the League, those who serve simply for the sake of religion, he could not make up even one complete company of soldiers. Do you agree?
And if I do?
Then we might find some retreat from the abyss.
My first sight of the King of Navarre was at dinner.
Fernand, come and meet a Catholic.
Eating, as custom was then, hands in the dish, with his fingers.
He was served by my master's men. No covered dishes. Eating without having his food tasted. No tasting. No. Are you drinking? No more. I was not there, but I am told not.
You needed stamina at the court of Navarre. Everyone ate what he pleased, and as much as he wanted. Only there was rather too much urging and daring us to drink. But with ease and the dispense of ceremony, a great deal was shaped at these gatherings.
I cannot be shifted in this matter of religion. You see, he surrounds me.
Well, some of them are men of great strength, but no subtlety.
Do you have any enemies?
I imagine not.
That wish to kill you? That wish to wipe you off the face of the earth by force? I need such men around me. I will remain a Protestant, but offer my allegiance to the king against the Leaguers. He needs protection too.
You must offer more.
I wish to be reconciled with him, though he bears arms against me. Though he seemingly hesitates as to his choice of successor. Nothing in his coronation oath gave him the right to bar his legal heir. There's no more I can offer.
You overestimate the strength of your position. Paris belongs to the League and to Guise. The city will not accept you as king. Here in the south, you are close among your own people. To the rest of the kingdom, though they may not dislike you, you are a heretic.
If I convert, who will believe that conversion?
Amongst the Leaguers and your own people there would be suspicion. Most of the French people would, on the contrary, be happy to see you submit to the true faith. It would be a mark of statesmanship. I suggest a middle course. A preliminary agreement between you and the king to renounce Protestantism if necessary.
In what circumstances?
The illness of the king, if he declined further.
My followers would not allow it.
Then you are being led by them toward a war with your legitimate king. Guise will provoke you. You will play into his hands. He will inherit. As war upholds the League, peace destroys it.
Talk to the king. Offer an alliance. Tell him I do not bar the way to reconciliation. Find out what he thinks, as we talk now, away from those who surround him. He knows well enough of my liking for you. We will speak as man to man through you. I'll write some words to that effect. We bypass all other counsel. I have no wish for my own followers to know the facts and details of these negotiations. We will assess how far he is in the hands of Guise, his own man. You have a secretary?
Yes.
He's trustworthy?
Yes.
A Catholic?
He's the natural son of a priest, and can discuss theology like a doctor of the Sorbonne. Fasts, keeps vigil, prays, and knows more often than not from where I've lifted my sources.
And on a late Friday night in winter, ink freezing, pen stiff, fingers numb, hands shaking, and not just with the cold, my first task in the King of Navarre's service was to write a letter to his kinsman, the King of France.
I fully recognise your goodwill for the repose of this kingdom, and in particular towards me. No accidents, good or bad, will ever change my inclinations. You know what I like about your master?
Sir? No, sir.
He's not a flatterer. It's the mark of friendship.
Though my devotion is not mindless, sir.
I'm told you're a theologian.
Yes. It's what I enjoy reading, sir.
Do you retain what you read?
Yes, sir.
I don't. I have people to remind me. Your master's refused a place on my council.
I'm better at one remove, sir.
In manner, the King of Navarre was of lively, almost restless temperament, vigorous and alert, though sometimes harsh in his manner, and more so in his replies.
You're Catholic? Why?
In these times of trouble, sir, I think it better to keep a settled faith.
Well, you can instruct me one day in what I should think about the Mass and so forth.
When will that day be, sir?
The king, I'm told, grows more fanatical in his devotions to Catholicism. Have you heard this?
No.
Has a private chapel, an oratory draped in black, repairs there with his favourites every Friday, and flagellates himself, or gets flagellated. Do you think this helps the kingdom or his health? Denies himself hunting in the company of women, no longer cares to see the sex. God forbid, or God willing, the inheritance will be mine.
The king always questioned, argued, with himself and others.
God willing, sir. The letter. It's late.
Honours those to whom he shows least honour.
Who?
Short speeches. Vigorous.
You. It's a healthy affection that dares to wound and offend us for our own good. Let me have a look at the letter. I lose my thread.
Close up, it was as I had been told. The King of Navarre never washed. It was a matter of pride, of masculinity. My first encounter with a king was one who smelt of rotting meat. Each court, at that time, had its paid informers, and the meetings with the Queen Mother and with Navarre would soon be no secret. Though there would be inevitable speculation as to the nature of any visit to Paris, its ostensible purpose would be to supervise the publication of a new volume of essays. It was decided to start when the worst of winter had passed, the roads open and speculation dampened. That winter was wild beyond anything in recent memory, with a mass of snow, and Montaigne returned to his estate, his daughter, and his wife.
You don't want this embassy?
Oh, I dislike losing. That's why I gave up games of chance.
Your mission is secret.
Yes, and I mortally hate secrecy. I prefer plainness, naked truth.
Will you stay at court?
No, though I will do what I can to get news about what's stirring there. The king will learn of my presence because the queen will tell him.
Catherine?
Yes, and an audience will be arranged to talk about my essays, which the king admires. And so we establish a channel that gets round the advisers, courtiers. These matters will not be managed quickly.
You may not return.
Why do you say that?
At your age, your health, so long a journey and this secrecy. Why subject yourself to this?
Well, it's not at my request. Death's the same to me anywhere. It could come when planting cabbages. Or loose tile. I would rather it on horseback than in a bed.
And what of us? To die in some stranger's house? Or betrayal? Treachery?
It's not at my request. I'm too pliable.
No, you're not. You avoid subjecting yourself to any sort of obligation. You do nothing that doesn't please you.
We have not made a bargain in getting married to keep continually tied to each other by the tail.
You've no need of anyone. Then who will go with you? Pellier?
He would help me supervise publication.
Do you want him as a son-in-law?
What do you mean?
I think there's an attachment between him and Leonore.
Has she told you this?
I hear it in everything she says about him. I see it in her eyes.
He said nothing about her to me, beyond the formalities.
It's not in his interest to do so. He has no income or property.
Does he share this attachment?
I thought you might know.
I've talked to him once or twice about these matters, but no, I don't think he notices her.
Would you countenance a secretary as son-in-law?
I doubt that the circumstances will arise.
She thinks of him all the time.
You talk to her about these things?
She wept while he was away.
She knows too few men.
How many do you need to know? She's 17. He has regular features. He's handsome, reserved, well-mannered. Everything an impressionable girl might find appealing.
And is employed by me.
You admire him, you say. Of uncommon abilities. You've always said that you're waiting to pass on your domestic responsibilities to a younger man.
Well, I don't know if his abilities run or are suited to the management of an estate, no more than mine. You manage it capably enough.
So you tell me sometimes. One day we'll need younger hands.
He has none of the knowledge a householder needs.
He can tell a cabbage from a lettuce, unlike you. And knows the difference between one grain and another. He can reckon, add up. He's diligent.
And a moderation and seriousness that would be laudable even in an older man. But he has no means.
We have all we need. What's needed is better management of what we have. Younger bones.
I will inquire at some point about his feelings, if any, for her.
Don't talk to Leonore.
No. But she's too sheltered. She needs more experience. By the time we return, these feelings of hers might have faded. In the spring, when you can, take her to Bordeaux. Let her enter into some society there. She lacks company.
What do you lack?
Me? I lack for nothing. Is not your house open to fine, healthy air, sufficiently furnished, and more than sufficiently capacious? And is some extraordinary and indigestible worry festering in you? Then what do you lack? I have, in truth, observed the laws of marriage more strictly than I had either promised or expected. I have every reason to give thanks. A capable and loving wife, my daughter, this estate. I have, it is ingrained, an inclination to a certain detachment in relationships, and find it rather more bearable always to be alone than never to have the power to be so. I love freedom and independence, my very favourite qualities, idleness and freedom. A life burdensome neither to myself or anyone else, miserable to my mind, is the man who has no place in his house where he can be alone, where he can privately attend to his needs, where he can conceal himself. My library is a little hard to reach, the third floor of a tower. Most of the days of my life, and most of the hours of the day, are spent here. It's round, curving shelves on all sides, 16 paces of free space in diameter, and presents at a glance all my books arranged on 5 rows. I can see below me my garden, my farmyard, my courtyard.
No snow. It's stopped.
And not so cold.
He moved around working. His mind wouldn't budge otherwise, leafing through one book and then another, without order and seemingly without plan, in disconnected fragments.
Can you reckon?
Is that a question to me?
Yes.
Yes, I can.
You see, most of our coins I don't know. Have you ever read a contract?
I studied law for a time. Dusty masses of legal papers.
What an admirable man you are. What would I not do than read a contract? I have none of the knowledge a householder needs.
And with these interruptions, limberings, discursions, walking back and forth, he would begin to dictate. he spoke onto paper
To be tied
as to the first man he meets.
to one single way is not to live, but to exist. If you form it well and take it rightly, there is no finer relationship in our society than marriage. A sweet association of lives full of constancy, trust, and mutual obligation. Have you got that?
One moment.
A good marriage, useful to both parties and beyond. If a man has no contentment with such just occasion for it, where does he expect to find it? Leave it there. I think that's what I think. We will have a look at it again. I'm going to keep a journal of this mission. It will be separate from these musings. You will help me write it.
A travel journal?
The visit to Paris may be prolonged. You will come as my nephew.
Me? Nephew?
We will devise some parentage for you. Some convincing familial attachment. You will be better treated thereby. I will instruct the servants. You come not as secretary, but to continue your education. You will eat with me. A proper bed will be provided, and so on.
Do I get a new name?
No. The better the lie, the greater the proportion of truth contained.
Is that original? Do you want me to write that down?
I think if originality was always required, you would be without employment. Oh, but you write it down anyway.
It may come in.
But you may have to remind me what parentage we decide for you. Bad memories make bad liars. Oh, write that down too.
Very good.
Would you like to be someone else?
Not anyone. I would like what we've just referred to, more originality of mind.
That may come with age. When you've looked round a little, freed yourself from your influences, conventional notions and morality.
And what about you?
Oh, I would like a different body. I would like not to be married.
Until around 40, his health had been blithe, ebullient, and little subject to disease. But for the last few years, a stone would form in his kidney, block his urine, and cause him intense pain till voided. Often the pain was acute, even without a stone. It was a condition he found eased, oddly, in the saddle. Even in agony from the stone, he could hold out for 10 hours on horseback, pricking the sides of the horse with a youthful and insolent ardour. I never saw him less tired or complaining less of his pains, for his mind was so intent on what he encountered that I think this took his mind off his ailment.
Our first night we have put up at a farm, and I have voided a stone as big and long as a pine nut, and as thick as a bean at one end, though it's a stupid habit to keep account of what you piss. As ever, eliminating the stone clears my head, improves my sight. It's not alacrity I feel, quite, but renewal. If I meant my life as I could wish, I would choose to end it with my rear in the saddle.
Well, that's a cheerful thought.
I'm covered in straw.
It's not much of a place, mainly deserted. There's a chapel. It seems popular with the sparrows.
Did you get your cloak over your head?
Yes.
You pray for long periods. Why?
It's as I was taught. I compose my thoughts.
Is God present? Does he listen?
Sometimes. I feel so.
Do you address requests to him?
At times.
Are these requests granted?
I pray for the souls of my parents.
Ah. And for the living?
The sick. I pray for you sometimes.
And look, I'm still here. Forgive me.
Yeah, I do.
And what about yourself?
That I keep on the path. Do what's right.
obey you, and so forth, despite your provocation. Would you like a look at the chapel? A walk, perhaps?
If we admit the possibility that the Earth moves round the Sun, and I do, do you?
Yes.
Well, then why do we suppose that man is the centre of all things? 1,000 years from now, a third option may then reverse the two earlier ones.
So, watch out, man.
A different notion, what was previously unknown or inconceivable. Nothing is solid at all.
He accepted the world as it seemed to be, with just a formal nod to the divine. Transcendental matters, marvels, what he called extravagances, never engaged him for long. That morning, we got upon the subject of marriage. He valued friendship rather than passion, he said. That love is a creation of the lover and his passions. That one should marry at a good age.
Close to Aristotle's ideal of 35.
As you did.
Of my own choice, I would have avoided marrying.
Would you?
Is the truth, yes. Custom, practice of ordinary life, that's what bears us along.
Your wife is...
Beautiful?
Yes.
And I'm not. It wasn't grace and beauty, but connections and means. We do not marry for ourselves, whatever we say. We marry just as much more for our posterity, for our family. Do you think of marriage?
No. Not at present. The transit of the country at this time was not without danger. The direct road lying by several of the Protestant strongholds.
Whoa! Whoa! Whoa!
Michel de Montaigne!
That's me!
Dismount!
A gang of 8 or 10 masked men made us prisoner, took us deep into the nearby forest, unhorsed, baggage and strongbox searched, horses and equipment divided amongst our captors. By bits of their regalia, they might have been soldiers.
Please be careful. Are you a Protestant, sir? I don't know your rank. Sergeant? Captain? You know my name. Are you a leaguer?
No.
Money in this one or what?
You're a Catholic.
With too many Protestant friends for a good Catholic. You know my name. You know the religion I was born with. Before I'm a Catholic, I am a Gascon, and the best of us have known for many years how to live in amity with one another. We are moderate men.
These were not highwaymen. This was an enterprise more deliberately planned. But from an apprehension of violence, or such a hazard, we had provided a safe place for Navarre's letter to his cousin the king, amongst Montaigne's own papers, the bulk of which were also written in my hand.
You see, there are a lot of books and papers. That's my business, my occupation. I'm a lover of letters and the classic authors. I find my delight rather among the dead than with the living.
Yeah, well, what about you?
I'm his nephew.
My late sister's son. Worked sometime also as secretary for your King of Navarre. Your king, whom I have on a number of occasions entertained at my house.
For an hour in that woodland, I became a more significant man than my mother would have recognized. And whether because of this untruth and my answering their questions about the king and his court, as if I was a familiar, for whatever reason, there was a sudden and unexpected shift. Gentler words, and some change of mind and conduct. Their leader took off his mask and revealed his name.
Simeon. Sergeant.
You have fought with Navarre?
Yes. At Coutras.
You're not a mercenary.
No.
Then who put you up to this? I go to Paris to prepare the book you see for publication. But take what valuables you wish and allow us to proceed on our way.
No, sir.
No, on which count?
Your belongings will be returned as far as I can recover them.
That's our danger to them. They're worried Navarre will recant, renounce his religion. We're not popular. Marked men.
I ordinarily reply to those who ask me the reason for Monsieur de Montaigne's travels at that time. that I think there was a certain capacity in him for action and dissimulation, which other circumstances might have developed.
You were very frank, gave no ground.
My face and frank manner.
Quite separate, of course, from the truth.
And though he had not in himself the usual springs of ambition, it would be unsurprising if he had not felt some strange stirrings of excitement in this role he was invited to undertake.
And you have a greater capacity for lying than your confessor might care to know. It's all that reading of the classics.
We travelled without the usual unwieldy entourage of servants, acquaintances and hangers-on, the less to draw attention to ourselves. And apart from the need for hostelry and to buy and sell horses on the way, we managed to keep clear of unwelcome strangers till out of Protestant lands. In Orleans, next to the Benedictines with whom we stayed, was a sizable order of prostitutes.
I told them you were shy.
You've talked to them.
Because you're afraid to. They liked your looks. They think you shun them.
A walled garden, a palace of pleasure. He was curious about anyone he met. Customs and practices.
Trade secrets. They charge a great deal, even for conversation. Would have charged me, but I said I was writing a book, that they may have heard of me. They hadn't. The exception to these charges, for conversation, is with the monks. If the good brothers, however, desire what they shouldn't, the usual charges are made. These charges can be deferred till the monk finds some means of paying.
Alms?
Oh, I shall ask our host, the abbot. There are other ecclesiastical visitors. The local bishop and his retinue come for what's called conversation on a monthly basis, and he blesses the women on leaving. This is well known and much commented on in the city. The bishop, in explanation, talks to the women, he says, in order not to appear too reserved.
You could hear the roar of Paris before you arrived, then smell the stench. Reports had reached us that, for a fear of an uprising, the Duke of Guise had been banned from the city, because for most of its citizens there was only one king of Paris, and it was not their lawful king, but Guise. For our part, caution was needed, and we put up at some distance from the court, and set about our ostensible aim of publication of the essays. Though Monsieur de Montaigne was strong, the long journey had tired him with all its attendant discomforts and dangers. Most of the work of publication fell to me, and a strange sight greeted me during my early days in the capital. Some Huguenots had struck down and mutilated an image of the Virgin Child at a street corner near Saint-Gervais. The king himself walked in procession carrying a white taper in a ceremony to replace the statue.
With a bodyguard.
Yes.
He goes nowhere without them. His protection. And a show of piety.
Kneeled, prayed, wept.
It's all extremity, excess, ostentation, and the populace loathe him.
One fell to his knees next to me and asked to be delivered from him and his hangers-on.
I've been given this, a booklet on etiquette for an audience with the king. He's retreating. No longer eats in public. When he does eat, his gentlemen attend on him rather than servants. Certain individuals may approach the king, but it's codified. You go through the master of the king's household, chamberlain, and so on. I don't think he's master of himself. He's frightened. There's only one entrance to the Louvre for his security. All the other entrances have been walled up.
What will you do?
The Queen, his mother, is back in Paris. She's as anxious as anyone for her son to resume talks with Navarre. It needs privacy. If he no longer eats in public, that will be the time to talk to him. He likes my essays. I go to see him as a man of letters, a follower of no faction, head high and countenance open. We will see if my independence and impartiality is believed.
Excuse me, sorry to stop. Could you tell me where the Rue de Livre is?
We had been given the address of a gentleman from the court of Navarre who lived in the area they called Little Geneva. He would be the conduit for any communication between the two princes. It was the first time I crossed one of the city's bridges, over the Little Bridge, crowded with houses, which was wondrous to see, and by way of the learned district on the south bank of the Seine, established contact with this fellow, a Captain Guillon.
Have your rooms been searched?
No.
Is there someone there at all times?
We don't keep anything of interest there.
You're from Toulouse?
Not far. Rabastens.
I know Rabastens.
It's just a bend in the road.
What do you make of Paris, then?
It's overwhelming. But I feel at home.
How's that?
Amongst the colleges and students. I feel as if I've lived here before.
I feel as if I've lived here too long. You'll be wearing earrings next, and bracelets and curling your hair. You visited the court yet?
No.
They use forks at the table, wear night clothes to go to bed in, wash their hair. It's the strangest place on earth.
Costumes of brightly coloured satin, breeches, doublet and mantlet. Clothes are covered in pleats and long slashes, strewn with buttons, ribbons. Shirts with 4 sleeves, 2 for use and 2 for show. Mulberry, the fashionable colour. Cloaks hung over the shoulders loosely.
The king is reclining, his leg loosely covered in a white cloth. He is recovering from an abscess on the foot.
Your Majesty.
The diseased foot, I have been told, has been put into the throat of a newly bled bull.
You are here in Paris to publish a new edition of your essays?
A copy I seek permission to present to Your Majesty.
Willingly.
There are some 12 or 13 new essays, which you will not find there, Your Majesty. They are not yet ready. But enclosed within the binding at the back is a letter from your cousin, the King of Navarre.
I understand. My mother said you had spoken with him recently. Kings get little time to themselves, and if anyone approaches, we will speak of your essays. You have knowledge of the contents of this letter?
Yes. It is a desire for reconciliation.
I have always found the King of Navarre to be a straightforward man. I have always been inclined to like him, and know he likes me. He's a little sharp and choleric at times, but at heart he's a good man. But bears arms against me.
Your Majesty will see from the letter, which has his signature and seal, that I am instructed to negotiate, should Your Majesty desire it, on the King of Navarre's behalf, in such a way that we avoid the usual advisers and pressures. If Your Majesty can find time to see me again...
Your Majesty.
And look, we are being approached. An architect with some scheme. A moment.
When last we met, you were kind enough to say, sir, that you liked my book.
And you said, I think, that means I must like you. We will talk further, Monsieur de Montaigne. There are entertainments tomorrow night. I will have a look at this book in the interim. Perhaps then. You like the city? Are settled here?
Even its warts and spots, sir.
Only it no longer owes its allegiance to me.
Our being is cemented with sickly qualities. Whoever should remove the seeds of these qualities from man would destroy the fundamental conditions of our life. I suspend judgment with this king, but it is worth recording a prejudice. Between the King of Navarre, who stinks like a horse, and the one who smells sweeter, my preference is for the more rank.
That evening, as we were settling down to supper, a courtier came to Montaigne to say that the king was contriving that Montaigne, at the end of the entertainments and dinner, would be invited into the private apartments to say what he thought about friendship, and to bring what books he had to hand.
About friendship? Friendship?
It was what the king specifically asked me to report to you. The king had been greatly interested in what you, sir, had said to him on the subject of friendship, and wanted to hear more from you on that theme.
I have written about friendship, certainly. Yes. I will take him at his word and put my ideas together as best I can. You will bring the books. You'd better get some clothes.
Clothes?
Tomorrow morning. New clothes. I should think even a lackey or groom at this court is better dressed than you.
I would my mother was still alive.
To see you at court?
She made my shirts.
You go to the Rue des Lombards for that.
To wear or for show?
You've no vanity.
In my own thoughts alone, believe me, sir, I am the vainest, most arrogant man alive.
I think you have a superficial tinge of vanity, not the whole dye, and no or little vanity about your person. You are blessed with exceeding good looks, of which you seem to take no account. My daughter is not immune to them. Does that surprise you?
No.
You have marked her regard?
It's on the basis of appearance, sir.
No, not entirely.
I don't want new clothes. I don't want finery.
I can't afford finery. They're trappings, that's all. And you will probably never acquire the necessary stylish ease in them. A neglected stocking is probably the way to start. Hood over your shoulder, cloak worn like a scarf. These are vanities. You won't be corrupted by them, sadly.
The entertainments that night were at the Château de Madrid in the Bois de Boulogne. Theatricals. Famous Italian comedians, the I Gelosi, favourites of the Queen Mother, who was present.
I find it hard to pass judgment on a man whose bad qualities exceed his good. We were well fed and graciously received, but as far as the problems we had to present and solve were concerned, we could make no headway whatsoever. The talk was of Guise, where he was, Soissons, when and if he would be allowed to return to the city.
People think me a coward if I let him go untouched.
This was in open hearing.
I see plainly that if I allow these people to do as they please, I shall not only have them as companions, but in the end they will be my masters. From now on, we must be king, for we have been the valet for too long.
It would be much to your credit if you were to come to terms, in whatever way you can, for the present. For time often brings many things which one cannot foresee. And you must yield to time.
What have you succeeded in obtaining over 5 years? You would give away cities and titles to him.
Sometimes you mistake my meaning.
Then, after a motion from the Queen, voices were lowered, and it was noticeable, though they sat together, they spoke little to each other, if at all. Later, the King was so busily engaged in dispensing hospitality that the time when I might have been called on seemed to have gone by, till after midnight, when the King announced he wished to talk to me about my essays, privately.
Monsieur de Montaigne.
In all this time, I had had no words with the Queen, in case our mission was suspected.
You will have overheard. I noticed your glance. He is determined to exercise his authority. I've never been in such trouble before, nor with less like to see my way out of it. Unless God puts his hand to it, I do not know what will happen. He disapproves of everything I do. I look forward to reading your new essays myself, Monsieur de Montaigne.
This was a king determined to rule alone, playing at exercising authority.
Navarre says he thinks only of peace. You will tell him that I can as yet make no alliance till he abjures his faith.
But there was no line of conversation that was not interrupted by crossings and surprising changes.
Is your nephew not still with you?
So flighty and erratic was he.
My nephew, sir.
I saw him with some books.
I think nearby, sir. nor was I able to make any more than glancing contact with the matter at hand.
The one question a king asks, it is a simple question. Is this man my friend or my enemy? Who has my interests at heart, Guise or Navarre? Who has the crown's interests at heart? Who will mourn me? You are silent. Uncharacteristically so. You have written of a friend of yours who died, of whom you have never ceased to mourn.
Yes.
At 33. He died at 33. My age.
There are many more who die at my age, sir. There is nothing suspicious about a particular date or age, and the years drag us all towards death. Not a man that night one could talk to effectively.
And since his death, you say, you have no express need of anyone.
Yes. It was a grief I couldn't shake off. Thank you. His mind hurried from one extreme to the other, for reasons beyond any man's guess. Well,
nothing was accomplished.
His mind was on death, that he had no friends of cherished intimacy, and he paid some attention to you. You were admired, the young man with the books. Then, did you speak Italian? Were you devout? And so on. My nephew has found favour with the king.
I had been working with the publisher Langelier to supervise publication of the new series of essays, a dozen or so, substantial and of a great originality, which surpassed, in my opinion, his earlier work. It was at the publisher's that a letter arrived, of some significance to the events that followed. A letter from a woman unknown to him.
She thought I was dead, she informs me.
Well, one day this may, of course, sadly be true.
She has longed to meet me, but when she made inquiries, the rumour came back that I was dead. There's an invitation for the corpse to call on her and her mother.
How old?
The mother.
Your new admirer.
She doesn't say. In love with ideas, she says, and is glad that I'm continuing to write. So am I. Has given up city life almost entirely during these hazardous times. Lives a day's ride from Paris. She would like to be my friend. Feels she already is. And this should put you on the balls of your feet, if not your toes.
Well, me?
Wants to be my helpmeet. Secretary. Would like to be my apprentice, she says. Your position is under threat. Her handwriting is admirable. She's self-educated, she says.
Our lodgings were close to a Benedictine monastery. Directly in front of us, its gates led into a delightful garden, through which an unfrequented grassy path wound in and out through the sun and shade, in such a way as if one was not still within sight and sound of the city. You could think of yourself in the midst of a forest. What I heard that morning was the sound of the Duke of Guise, unbidden, unannounced, returning to the city. It was to change the course of our mission, the start of an uprising, Leaguist troops against the king, the day of the barricades.
The fixed point at a time of anarchy is external authority. Obedience is owed to the crown, the king's office, whatever wretched creature occupies the throne.
He had fallen ill that very day. An attack, internally, of the stones.
The shock knocked me unconscious from sheer pain.
Who was with you? Anyone?
I was in the street. I'd come out to see what the disturbance was about.
I've been unable to get back here. I went to look, and I've never seen such a furious madness, fury. Streets blocked off.
The Catholic League?
Yes, against troops loyal to the king.
Because of Guise's return.
He rode around as if to quiet his people, but succeeded in stirring them up.
Skirmishes?
More than that.
A massacre?
No. I counted 6 bodies, though many injured. It's quiet again now. It's so quiet, you would have said it had been a dream.
No. The people have lost their obedience and reverence for the king. This is a battle, now avert. The king is no longer master, not of himself, nor of the city. I am not well, and our position here is not safe. And whether it's the size of the stone inside me... I feel sliced open from inside. Movement is pain.
During this period, which lasted only a few days, he was ill and bedridden, his pain from repeated passing of the stones near unendurable.
I recognize hardly anything.
What do you mean?
This city, Paris in my youth, throngs of students, turned to ashes, religion, justice.
Don't tie yourself. I saw him during that time, when death stared him in the face from close up, push her well away by his disdain for the fear she brings. Around us, great events were taking place. The king had fled the city, slipping out so quietly no one noticed he had gone. Paris no longer the right place for anyone associated with the king, or with Navarre.
If Navarre is regarded as a public enemy, so are we, and we have no king to work on. This city is no place for moderate men.
We're regarded as secret Protestants.
Where is the Queen?
Still here, talking to Guise.
Pacifying him?
I don't know. This is the tittle-tattle I'm hearing. Guise believes there is an alliance between her, the king, and Navarre.
And the king's in Chartres, you say? It's spring outside today.
Yes.
It's a question of remaining with the Leaguists here in Paris, or backing out and going home. Or to my new admirer. I could just about manage a day's ride. I'm better on horseback than between sheets.
I will accompany you.
No. Go to Chartres. Follow the king, as if loyally, but find out what's stirring. Report to Navarre. This will not be as your life has been so far, up to your neck in books. It's circumstance and chance, or hazard, experience. You'll be on your own. Whatever my absurdities may be, I have no intention of concealing them. This is a record of various and variable occurrences. She was a woman of 24, self-educated and of great spirit. Marie de Gournay.
No one predicted that I would become wicked, only useless. The danger was not that I would do ill, but that I would do nothing.
You talk of your mistakes honestly.
I write of my own failings. They are more interesting than my occasional triumphs.
We barely even understand ourselves. A country turned upside down, a king in exile from his own city. In the blue haze of spring, among small meadows and by the banks of a stream, I became infatuated in the course of an afternoon. A man of near 60, besotted with a woman not much older than my daughter.
When did your father die?
When I was 12.
Do you not feel alone in this district?
I read. I learn a while. Here there are people, but rarely those whose conversation I enjoy.
Sometimes, as if to spite me, I watch my desire come to life, grow and increase despite my resistance. The devil rides me.
This is my father's library.
Ah.
how I came upon your essays.
Worn by an illness of many years, feeling myself caught now in the embrace of old age, her warmth.
You allow yourself the freedom of digression.
It would be hard to say from what I am digressing. I cannot keep my subject still. I leave my subject without scruple the moment my own interest flags.
Why do you write?
Why? Only when pressed by too unnerving an idleness and the gloom of solitude. Yet the solitude is self-inflicted. I was once afflicted with an overpowering grief. These are the agitations of a brain that would otherwise have been addressed directly to a friend, or by letter.
He died.
Of the plague. His absence first put into my head this dream of dabbling with writing.
Your other self. That's what you call him?
Yes.
A true friendship. A spiritual friendship.
And in the interest of her honour and my dignity, I let pleasure go. I think I write clumsily, almost drunkenly at times.
Are you seeking a compliment?
No.
You write frankly. That's your charm. You make a virtue of inconsistency.
Not nonsense, then. Well, I have not obliged myself not to say stupid things, and I have never yet seen that for the sake of a man's beauty of mind, however wise and mature that mind may be, women were willing to grant favours to a body that was slipping into decline. In God's name, madam, take the trouble to leaf through some part of my new essays, if you wish, in some leisure hour, and tell me what you think of them, for I fear I'm getting worse as I go on. During this time, which lasted for several weeks, my thoughts were possessive and licentious. There is a want, an emptiness, an ache that will not be satisfied in these poor bodies of ours this side of the grave. Fond, foolish, regretful. Not, as once, pleasure postponed and made keener with difficulty. Had I pressed my suit, landed, who knows the result? But there were other external factors that slowed or tamed my ardour.
It's a strange court.
You have talked to the king?
Yes, it's a note, written covertly for you to communicate with the King of Navarre. I would like you to convey an instruction, that's you, to my brother Navarre.
Seek no reason for the brevity of this, except that letters from my hand, or those around me, will be read. My brother, this is to notify you that whatever resistance I have made to the Duke of Guise, I have not been able to prevent his mischievous designs. Though I prepare for war against you, my brother, I have no wish for this fight, but I do not play for time. Be on your guard and do not move. Make no move. Time brings that which we cannot foresee. It's like a riddle.
The question is, well, there is no other question at court, when will the king revenge himself on Guise? Guise's capture of Paris has sealed his own fate. The king will never forgive him.
The king has said this to you?
Well, not directly. He has said he wanted you to reassure the King of Navarre that he recognises him as his sole and only heir, and that if he should die, Navarre should seize the throne to see that Guise never wears the crown of France.
You have managed private communication with the king? How?
He washed my hair.
He...
It is a service he enjoys performing for his favourites, or those whose outward appearance appeals. Perhaps with me it was to allow time, apart, for what you've read and heard. The washing of the hair is in some imitation of Mary Magdalene, an act of devotion, humility, amongst all the follies and debaucheries.
Have you been corrupted yet? Any carnality?
Why does that interest you so much?
The reassurance.
My own morals lately have been debased, with a growing tendency towards deterioration.
I have avoided the more obvious forms of temptation.
You've been tempted?
Yes. It's why I require and apply restraint. It's a court given over to pleasure, indulgence, rivalries, gossip. And I am admired. Did you know I would be admired?
Yes. And you must stick close to the king while you have this power, while remaining inaccessible.
He's like a sick child.
The king?
Full of resentment, moody, restless, intermittently kind, gentle. But there's nothing, or little, beyond the immediate impulse for pleasure.
You have a touchstone, your own heart. You're inexperienced, but it's difficult to advise. You're in a position of some danger. If it looks ugly on the right, you take the left. If you find yourself discomforted, dissatisfied, debased, you stop.
You want me to remain there?
You worry too much about veniality, I say to him. Blemishes. You have ability and virtue, but a man may love virtue too much. But be cautious and avoid suspicion. And I fear for him. At your age, I was intemperate, hot-headed, and my friend, de la Boétie, 2 years older than me, but 20 in wisdom and knowledge, said, "Be not wiser than you should be, but be soberly wise." You remind me of him. You have more sense and discretion than me, but perhaps, like you, he was too dutiful, too assiduous. For a number of years after his death, I was under the shadow or sway of my friend's ideals. Then I found a way of my own. And you must leave me soon. I mean as secretary. Your future lies with Navarre. He would like me beside him as a counsellor, you heard him. I refuse. But he will need men like you beside him when, God willing, he becomes king. A good Catholic to instruct him. I will inform him in time of your service to him. There is no greater task at this time that you could perform for him than you do now.
He needs you as advisor, sir, not me.
No, I'm too old and too ill.
I will remain with you.
No, you will learn to advise him. You have observed me. We've talked of these things many times. And you will counsel him honestly, with no fear for your position. He will do his best to make you submit to his will, and you will refuse this. You will not do or say what you do not feel. Honesty. Rough honesty if needs be. Frankness.
Sir.
Thank you.
Sometimes you will be wrong, but you can do no better than look princes in the face and tell them your limits. I have been able to take part in public offices without, I trust, departing a hair's breadth from myself. You take my role. You're young. It's time. Do nothing which makes you a slave to another.
When will I see you again?
When it's safe to do so. There must be no tittle of evidence for your role. Our mission.
But my time at court was limited. Our mission cut short for reasons now well known. Guise, accompanied everywhere, except in the king's presence, by a strong and loyal escort, entered the king's private chambers alone for a negotiation. In a planned attack, he was stabbed to death by several guardsmen to the king. The day of the dagger had come. Happy the man, Montaigne told me, who can entrust his pitiful old age to a friendly hand. It had been his long wish to pass on his domestic responsibilities to a younger man, that he would have welcomed me as son-in-law to take over the burden of the estate, but that this would not satisfy me, as it failed to satisfy him.
He will want you at his beck and call, as he would like me. Because of your youth and newness, you will, of course, oblige him, but retain a portion of yourself. He will think he owns you, but you hold back. I have myself a mortal hatred of being possessed by another, prince or no.
We had returned to the south.
You desire his good.
Paris was in full-blown and violent revolt against the king, and there was no room, for a time, for Montaigne's staggering middle road, he called it, of moderation. Murder followed murder. That year, 1589, the king was stabbed by a friar who had wormed his way into his presence, and Navarre became King of France.
We are, I know not how, double within ourselves. My mind goes backwards, the years dragging me towards death. I, who once lent a shoulder to princes, am weary of the agitation of courts. This same morning, writing to our new king while offering my services as duty requires, I beg to be excused from travelling. My failing health will not permit it, the length and hazard of the roads and such like. Pellier will go in my stead. And yet, I envy him, and will miss him. He liked and tolerated my humours. Well, though we cannot always have our own way, I desire the good of our country, but have no wish to grow ulcers. A new regime, some hope, and yet my zeal, such as it was, languishes. I let my gaze turn inwards and let my mind entertain itself in full idleness. Every day a new fancy, and our humours change with each shift in the weather. What pleases me now will soon be painful. All is change, contradiction, flux. The world in perpetual motion, everything in it moves incessantly. Constancy itself is nothing but a dance in slower time. Flux cannot know flux. Where then will judgment find its proper seat? My ideas might not be true. My account of them must be.
In his essays that were published during those strange times, with scant regard for propriety or convention, the naked man appearing, he wrote of his reason for writing.
I wonder yet about myself, my restraint in matters of the heart. Is this caused by an affliction, the friend who died all those years ago, with whom communication was so complete, that some mote or barrier my inward grieving self laboriously constructed over the years, and that these essays are the fruits of this? There is no pleasure that has any savour for me without communication. Not even a merry thought comes into my mind without my being vexed at having produced it alone, without anyone to offer it to.
In 1589, I left Montaigne and the south to join the new king, and was present in Paris when Navarre finally became a Catholic, and offering protection and freedom to the Protestants from whom he had come, thereby united the kingdom. And long after I had left Montaigne's service, I had a recurring dream, a welcome dream. I am in his tower, his study. It's shady as if at evening, and he's there, as he was.
Be free from habit. Are you writing this down?
Is this advice to me?
I think you should write it down. It's the last advice I'm going to give you.
Is it an addition to a particular essay?
It's valedictory. Be free from habit. Be free from ambition and greed. Be free from family and surroundings. Be free from fanaticism. Be master